energy sources. Well, Mike, thank you. Those comments are an excellent introduction to our next panel. And so I'd like to invite onto the stage right now Lauran, Wetemans, Peter Justesen, Peter Keller, Ali Shebab, and Synnøve Seglem to join us here for the next panel. Thank you. That was great. Welcome, everyone. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you all for joining us here on the stage. So the most promising alternative fuel today is natural gas, but for shipping to make the necessary investments and accelerate the use of LNG, a cross-industrial approach is going to be necessary. We're all familiar with the environmental benefits of gas as a marine fuel, and with more bunkering facilities built or planned at key maritime hubs, LNG has emerged as a viable alternative to heavy fuel oil. I'd like to start by asking Peter Keller. Because emissions regulations have improved, environmental performance are both good reasons for why the industry has to wean itself off of heavy fuel oil. But with many owners struggling in today's market, the investments required to build gas-fueled ships are daunting. So can you please share with us and make the business case for transitioning to LNG based on Tote's pioneering experience?
Well, in today's world, certainly as we all know, and we heard earlier today, the difficulty in the international shipping community, they are certainly daunting questions. But we have to look at our business on a long-term basis. We operate in the Jones Act in the U.S. Those ships have a 30 to 40-year life. When one looks forward at what the regulatory environment is, what your social sustainability requirements are over that period of time, and you tie that into the potential value of LNG as an alternative maritime fuel long term, you start to develop that business case, and you start to take a longer term view as opposed to what many ship owners unfortunately do is would take that short term view. And I think we all understand that from an environmental point of view, we really can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. I would also say that from a commercial point of view, we all understand today that environment sells, green sells, and at the end of the day, we are all in the business of selling. And I think we absolutely have to remember that as we look at our long-term viability.
Just quickly, what do you see, especially as the chairman of CLNG, what do you see as the key bottlenecks hindering the development of a competitive global LNG value chain?
Well, I think much of it is education. I think much of it is the kind of thing that we're doing here today, which is highlighting the case for LNG, making the case for LNG in an independent, non-emotional manner, understanding that LNG does in fact take care of the SOx problem, it takes care of the particulate matter problem, it takes care of the vast majority of the NOx problem, and it is one of the things that I was interested to see the photographs that Ms. Ling had before that shows you the difference that happens in our waterfront communities when we start to change that environment, when we start to change the SOx and the PM and the NOx, and all of a sudden we can see the building next door. We can fly into a city like Los Angeles or New York and not be overcome by the dark clouds which we unfortunately have made over the last years. Excellent. So I think it's more of an educational process and an understanding of the real long-term benefits to ourselves and the communities that we serve.
Excellent. I want to turn to Lauran. Shell is very confident in LNG, and LNG bunkering suppliers, though, might be unwilling to invest in the necessary infrastructure if there's no market, while owners are unwilling to invest in LNG-fueled ships if there's limited infrastructure. What's it going to take to bring the industry towards the tipping point?
I think it's key to unlock the demand. I think there is demand out there. There are people that are willing to invest, but it's about unlocking it in key scalable hubs. Mm-hmm. What we've done with Gasnor in Norway, with leading shipping companies in Norway like IceBig, we're taking to a larger scale and taking it globally. And that is about finding those key hubs around Singapore, around Rotterdam, around the US, around the Middle East. and with that, together with the customers, make that infrastructure actually happen. We are going to invest, but hand in hand together with where the demand is going to develop.
And you've also identified some of those key small markets that you're looking to.
Well, I think what has happened in Norway is a very good example of actually being able to take a lead in a smaller market setup, but it is something that gives me inspiration to actually take that one step further and take it globally.
Let's follow up on exactly that and turn to Peter Justesen on the question about how to actually strengthen the role of governments. What is the optimal role for governments in accelerating this uptake of LNG as a marine fuel? Should their involvement be limited more to regulation, or should they be subsidizing LNG infrastructure?
Well, good morning, everyone. Well, I think yesterday we heard that electrical cars will replace conventional cars within maybe 10 years. At the same time, you see in the streets of Oslo, you see a lot of electrical cars. And why is that? I think it's not because they're allowed to drive in the taxi and bus lanes alone. It's probably because the government is subsidizing electrical cars. And you see other examples from renewable energies where government subsidies allow the technology to be developed so that the costs come down to a level where subsidies can then be abolished. And in Norway, the government did, I think that's what Lauran is also referring to, the government did have a scheme to support LNG for ships, which has helped a lot to introduce and make Norway a leading country in that area, to the stage where I now understand that hydrogen is what they want to support and LNG no longer. So I do think that governments do have a role in helping this getting more on the way.
And tell us a little bit about Gas4C, the new initiative that ENGIE launched for ship-to-ship bunkering. You've also partnered internationally with Mitsubishi on that. Is that also something that's going to help to drive this market forward?
Yes, I think that ENGIE wants to take its place in this market and be a significant player. But we also recognize that it requires significant investments, and therefore we have partnered with NYK and Mitsubishi to form Gas4C to really provide a global platform for providing LNG to ships and to be able to share the risk of this business.
So all of you, in fact, are actively pursuing very innovative projects along the LNG value chain. Let me turn to Synnøve, because bunkering hubs are already available for coastal vessels and for fixed traders in some regions. How far away would you say we are from a global bunkering network that can serve deep-sea transportation?
Well, I'm not. I cannot tell you a date or a timeline, but I think that what is said today, I think it's to generate special hubs, and then it could be possible for vessels that are trading on regular trades from A to B. Our vessels is moving more around, so maybe not for those deep sea vessels, but I think it's more like it will come, but it will just be part of a solution together with the fuel that we already have today. So.
Peter, do you have thoughts on that as well? Global bunkering network?
Yeah, I think we're moving very, very quickly in that direction, and there's hardly a week or a day that goes by that some major port around the world is not making some sort of investment. We all understand what's happening in Singapore. In our own port of Jacksonville, our bunker barge comes into service later on this year, as well as a liquefaction plant. Same is going to be true in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. Certainly we know what's happening in Scandinavia, in Rotterdam, in Zeebrugge, in many of those places. I think we can expect New York is going to come online within the next year or two. I have great hope for Southern California now that the leadership in the Port of Long Beach has changed, and Mario Cadero's there now. He's a real champion of LNG. We're going to see it in places like Yokohama and other ports. So I think it's coming a lot quicker than we think. There's a lot of investment out there. If you just go through the exhibits across the street, you'll see more models of potential LNG fueling vessels, from our own bunker barge to vessels up to 7,000 and 8,000 cubic meters. And I think people aren't designing those things for their own health. They're designing them because they're going to sell, and it's going to move, and it's going to move relatively quickly once new ship orders start again. And when that's going to be, I'm not 100% sure, but I would guess as we go into early next year, we will start to see some movement in that again.
Maybe Lauran has the answer. He wants to jump in on this.
Well, I think, as Peter said, a lot of ports have already laid out the framework in order for LNG to be made available. Now it's a question of overcoming the first mover disadvantage that people do see of going in first. And I would rather turn it around and I say it's a first mover advantage. But this is where governments can play a role, because there is contingency built in costs that need to be taken out, and those contingencies and costs will be taken out as we start learning and building more and more vessels. If we look at the first vessels that were built versus the quotes that are now coming out of the yards, it is 20–30% more affordable. So I think it's now a question of, especially in the stage that the market is in, for the few people that are willing to lead, to actually demonstrate that, and with that, you will see a lot of people following. Note that Sovcomflot announced their Aframaxes a day later. American Eagle Tankers announced theirs. Obviously, they were working this all along, but it shows that once you set a trend, it starts to become more acceptable for people to actually jump in. But taking that first step, that is the one where we need to work much more closer together to overcome those challenges.
I do think it's important, let me, if I could, I do think it's important to recognize that 20 years ago there were 6 countries producing LNG and there were 8 countries consuming LNG. Today there are more than 38 countries producing LNG and there are more than 50 countries that are consuming LNG. The first step in any industry is the development of a global supply and a capacity to meet demand. The second step is then a whole series of complementary businesses will evolve off the back of that ready supply. The globalization of our abilities to use LNG as a transport fuel comes as the next step in the evolution, driven by technology, driven by the speed at which and the cost at which we can develop this, that are going to enable this to become a genuine component of the solutions on transport fuel.
So let's ask Ali Shebab, representative of an oil tanker company, as a test case of whether or not that shift is going to be made. KOTC is known for that beyond compliance approach to environmental regulation. So what would it take for you to transition towards embracing LNG as a fuel?
Well, let's say 2 years ago, we were talking about LNG in this conference, and it was just perhaps a new subject. Today, we can see that there is a greater picture to think about. And then if we ask again the question maybe 2 years from now, we will have better things to talk about, because there'll be a greater development, as mentioned just now. It takes me back into 2002 when I was writing the specification for development of the fleet. And we were, driven by the passion of reducing the emissions as much as possible and go beyond the compliance. But at that time, there wasn't really much of technology to rely on. Nobody was ready for it. So 2006, I sit in an office in HHI, meeting with classification societies and engine manufacturers and the shipyard. And then we were talking about the new engines, which can burn dual fuel, and the configuration as a modification on a ship, as a retrofit. And then we were waiting for this to materialize. Come back again in 2009, where I was again writing the specification for the new fleet. And then we could see that really things are not being moving as fast because there are many bottlenecks in the system. We need more confidence to be done. We are hoping that in the future, that we can at least go for LNG ready, have it in place, and then whenever really the bunkering stations or similar are ready, because the classical and conventional, let's say VLCC, takes operation in the port, for example, loading the cargo. There is a loading arm for the bunkering line, and then you take your bunkers and you leave. At the moment, we don't have this. But what we can see that in the future it is coming, and we are seriously looking at this, and we will for sure be the first movers in that direction.
Unless Knutsen gets there first, let's turn back to Synnøve, because you've been actively involved in LNG transport since 2004, and Knutsen is developing a pressurized natural gas (PNG) carrier. So can you describe a bit the PNG project for us?
Yeah, the PNG was the purpose behind PNG is to pick up stranded gas, natural gas, and then transport it in shorter distance than larger LNG carriers, and then directly to the consumers. So, it's more cost efficient. With you do not need to capitalize the infrastructure, very expensive liquefaction plants and regasification plants at the end user. So, but these vessels were more to deliver for consumer market and directly into, for example, the gas grid in some countries. So.
And Mike, you have a promising initiative, the Green Corridor, LNG fueled vessels between Australia and China. What's the status of that project?
Well, it's a partnership between three of the major miners in Australia, ourselves, MOL, and others who are participating and supporting in the development of a design around a iron ore carrier or dry bulk carrier to be LNG fueled and to be able to do the round trip between Northwest Australia and the movement of iron ore to China and back.
Excellent. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. It's been a very, very enlightening, fast-paced panel. Thank you all for sharing your perspectives. Please, everyone, join me in a round of applause for our panel. Thank you.